I'm joined by Yaki Lopez, Political Affairs at the Israeli Embassy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me with Rachelle. I'm actually with the Consulate General of Israel in Los Angeles.
Thank you for that. Now, observers usually think of this U.S. and Israel relationship mostly in terms of security. But what's their business and trade relationship like?
Well, you're right to mention that it's often seen that the relationship is seen through the security prism. But the truth of the matter is that the Israeli-U.S. relationship has many different facets that encompass it. The commercial ties between the two countries are ties that have significant impact on both economies in terms of the innovation that they foster in the two economies and in terms of the jobs that they create. In the last few years, there have been a variety of areas that we've increased cooperation on, mainly water and cybersecurity, two areas where Israel excels at, and the cooperation between the two states is something that can benefit both of us.
Now, in terms of the amount of trade and the size and scope of the economic relationship, how significant is it to both countries?
Well, it's tremendously significant for both countries, mainly for Israel. It has been the backbone of our economy for many years. The United States has been Israel's largest trading partners for many years. The bilateral trade is at around $40 billion, and it has been growing for many years. Israel was one of the first countries, or actually the first country, to sign a free trade agreement with the United States in 1985. And since then, the trade balance has risen by almost tenfold and has reached almost $40 billion.
Now, in terms of what you see as the potential economic opportunities for these two countries, what are the real standouts for you?
As I mentioned earlier, cybersecurity is an area that both our countries have a significant interest. Israel is one of the premier countries in the world in that area. Just in the last year, 20% of the entire investments on cybersecurity were invested in Israel and in Israeli companies. And that is something that we're definitely going to promote very heavily in our bilateral economic relationship with the United States. But also things that are more of a local level, such as water and agriculture. Israel has a great deal of experience and expertise in these fields. And it's something that we would like to bring to the United States and in terms of our economic impact locally.
And in terms of businesses that are innovating, obviously with the US, we know all about Silicon Valley, but a lot of people consider Israel to be a startup nation. What are some of the lessons, perhaps, that Silicon Valley can learn from Israel?
Well, you're right to mention that Israel in the last few years has been referred to as the startup nation. This stems from the innovative spirit that lots of Israelis have and nurture, and it's something that we put a great deal of emphasis in and invest in tremendously in R&D. Israel has the highest level of per capita of investment in research and development. And I think some of that spirit that Israelis have is something that we share with Silicon Valley. Many Israeli companies are based in Silicon Valley, have operations in Silicon Valley, and many multinational American corporations, hundreds, the likes of Apple and Intel, have their research and development centers in Israel because they have recognized that Israelis can bring a lot to the table in terms of their innovative spirit.
Now, that also means that you actually have to be able to allow more people to come into the country. And we know that immigration is really a hot button issue right now in the US. So what do we know about the Trump administration's view on Israelis qualifying for visa-free travel to the US?
Well, I'm sure that the new administration, as former administrations, have recognized that Israeli ingenuity and Israeli engineers and Israeli employees have a lot to contribute to the U.S. and to the U.S. economy, and I'm sure there will be the arrangements that are already in place that allow for thousands of Israeli employees to come in and work in many different sectors, but predominantly in the high-tech sector, I think those arrangements will continue for the benefit of both countries.
And just lastly, in terms of where the two countries go from here, as you mentioned, the US-Israeli trade agreement, the oldest, actually, the US trade agreement. So in terms of where things started and where Israel hopes they will go, what are some of the expectations?
Well, we would like for that relationship to continue in the direction that it has in the last few years. Israel will be celebrating 69 years of independence in a couple of months. And I was looking at data today, preparing for this interview, and in 1948, when Israel was founded, the trade between Israel and the United States was around $5 million. And today, as I mentioned, it's almost $40 billion. And we hope that that trajectory will continue in the years ahead for the benefit of both economies. We have a lot to learn from each other, and we have a lot to contribute to each other.
All right, thank you so much. Yaki Lopez, Israeli Political Affairs Consul in Los Angeles.